Probably the most easily recognizable kind of evil is that which simply rebels openly against heaven, as Satan rebelled before the world was. Willful, wanton opposition to God and his angels. From Cain through Caligula down to today's domestic and international hostilities, Satan has attempted to lure children of promise into violent, destructive rejection of the gospel and its teachings. These are harsh sins which the world has known only too well, but from which in large measure we are protected at this university, nestled safely near the everlasting hills. We are, for the most part, untouched by wars and tyranny and terror. Indeed, when measured against this world's history, where, to quote Nephi, Satan does rage in the hearts of men, this truly is Happy Valley. We have very few ragers between Payson and Lehigh. But there is another, more subtle tactic used by the primeval turncoat, which is not so violent, not so vengeful, and at first glance not so vicious. But there's the rub. Because Christ and his disciples, Satan's most important and necessary targets, because they would never seem to be attracted by flagrant, raging wrongdoing, this second approach becomes all the more sinister. It comes in the siren song of convenience. It is, in the parlance of your day, laid back. It says to every would-be Messiah, enjoy. Its anthem might well be from Diana Ross, ease on down the road. Surely fluttering somewhere over the highway to hell is the local Chamber of Horrors banner reading, welcome to the ethics of ease. Then Jesus was led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be with God. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights and had communed with God, he was afterwards an hungered and was left to be tempted of the devil. And when the tempter came to him, he said, If thou be the Son of God, command that these stones be made bread. But Jesus answered and said, It is written, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. Then Jesus was taken up into the holy city, and the Spirit setteth him on the pinnacle of the temple. Then the devil came unto him and said, If thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down, for it is written, He shall give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands they shall bear thee up, lest at any time thou dash thy foot against a stone. And Jesus said unto him, It is written again, Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. And again Jesus was in the Spirit, and it taketh him up into an exceeding high mountain, and sheweth him all the kingdoms of the world, and the glory of them. And the devil came unto him again, and said, All these things will I give thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. Then said Jesus unto him, Get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. Then the devil leaveth him, and behold, angels came and ministered unto him. One new convert to Christianity wrote of that moment, Christ withdrew alone into the desert to fast and to pray in preparation for a dialogue with the devil. Such a dialogue was in fact inescapable, for every virtue has to be cleared with the devil, just as every vice is only torn with reluctance and anguish out of the very heart of God. Because I believe such dialogues are entertained day after day, hour after hour, right here on the Brigham Young University campus, Happy Valley, USA, and because for us, like Christ, these temptations are far more tantalizing in their nature than the more hostile versions pursued by barbarians, let me comment briefly then on these three. Each of them deserves a sermon of its own and will be limited by the clock to only a sentence or two. If thou be the Son of God, command these stones be made bread. Whatever else Satan may do, he will certainly appeal to our appetites. Far better to play on natural, acknowledged needs than struggle to plant in us artificial ones. Here Jesus experiences the real and very understandable hunger for food, by which he must sustain his mortal life. We would not deny anyone this relief. Certainly we would not deny the Son of God. Israel had its manna in the wilderness. This is Israel's God. He has fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. Why not eat? He seems ready to break his fast, or surely must soon. Why not simply turn the stones to bread and eat? The temptation is not in the eating. He has eaten before. He will soon eat again. He must eat for the rest of his mortal life. The temptation, at least the part I wish to focus on, is to do it this way. To get his bread, his physical satisfaction, relief for his human appetite, the easy way, by abuse of power and without a willingness to wait for the right time and the right way. It is the temptation to be the convenient Messiah. Why do anything the hard way? Why walk to the shop or the bakery? Why travel all the way home? Why deny yourself any satisfaction when with ever such a slight compromise you might enjoy this much-needed nourishment? But Christ will not ask selfishly for unearned bread. He will postpone gratification indefinitely if necessary, rather than appease appetite, even ravenous appetite, with what is not his. There is too much sexual transgression on this campus. Any is too much, and we have too much. This highest of all physical gratifications you were designed and created to enjoy. It is as natural as it is appealing. It is given of God to make us like God. And Satan has certainly capitalized on a divinely ordained appeal. But it is not yours without price. Not instantly. Not conveniently. Not with cozy corruption of eternal powers. It is to be earned over time with discipline and love. It, like every good thing, is God's right to bestow, not Satan's. When faced with that inherent appetite, a disciple of Christ must be willing to say, yes, but not this way. In time, after marriage, with discipline. The right and proper and sanctified physical relationship of a man and a woman is as much a part, indeed more a part, of God's plan for us than is the eating of our daily bread. But there is no convenient Messiah. Salvation comes only through discipline and sacrifice. I plead with you not to yield to what one has called the glandular stench of our times. In your hours of temptation and vulnerability, I ask you not, in your case, to turn bread into stone with that fire that has gone unbanked and uncooled. Those loaves will be millstones, bogus bread, weighted with heartache and despair and pain. I ask you simply to care more than some of you now care. It is too easy today with the movies you can see and the magazines you can read. It is all tragically, painfully, cunningly convenient. In our time, the only restraint left is self-restraint. I ask you to say of this highest, most intimate, most sacred physical expression, yes, but not this way. I ask you to be inconvenienced until you've earned the right and paid the divine price to know the body and the soul of one you love. Now excuse me for speaking so boldly, but this has to be said. Perhaps another time even more can be said. If thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down from the pinnacle of this temple. Satan knows this holy structure is the center of religious life for Israel's people. It's the edifice to which the promised Messiah must come. Many are even now coming and going from their worship, many who through their traditions and disbelief will never accept Jesus as their Redeemer. Why not cast yourself down in a dramatic way, and then when the angels bear you up, as the Scriptures say they must, legions will follow you and believe. They need you. You need them. You need to save their souls. These are covenant people. How better to help them see than to cast yourself off this holy temple, unharmed and unafraid? The Messiah has indeed come. Well, the temptation here is even more subtle than the first. It's a temptation of the Spirit. of a hunger more real than the need for bread. Would God save him? Would he? Is Jesus to have divine companionship in this awesome ministry he now begins? He knows that among the children of men only suffering, denunciation, betrayal, and rejection lie ahead. But what of heaven? How alone does a Messiah have to be? Perhaps before venturing forth he ought to get some final reassurance. And shouldn't Satan be silenced with his insidious if? Why not get spiritual confirmation, a loyal congregation, and answer this imp who heckles, all with one appeal to God's power? Right now, the easy way, off the temple spire. But Jesus resists the temptation of the Spirit. Denial and restraint there are also part of the divine preparation. He will gain followers, and he will receive reassurance. But not this way. Neither the converts nor the comforts he will so richly deserve have yet been earned. His ministry is hardly begun. The rewards will come by and by, but even the Son of God must wait sometimes. The Redeemer, who would never bestow cheap grace on others, is not likely to ask for any himself. And so I ask you to be patient in things of the Spirit. Perhaps your life has been different from mine, but I doubt it. I've had to struggle to know my standing before God. As a teenager, I found it hard to pray and harder to fast. My mission was not easy. I struggled as a student, only to find that I had to struggle afterwards too. In this present assignment, I've wept and ached for guidance. It seems no worthy accomplishment has ever come easily for me, and maybe it won't for you. But I'm living long enough to be grateful for that. It is ordained that we come to know our worth as a child of God without something as dramatic as a leap from the pinnacle of the temple. All but a prophetic few must go about God's work in very quiet, very unspectacular ways. And as you labor to know Him and to know that He knows you, as you invest your time and your inconvenience in quiet, unassuming service, you will indeed find that His angels have charge concerning thee, and in their hands they shall bear thee up. It may not come quickly. It probably won't come quickly. But there is purpose in the time it takes. Cherish your spiritual burdens, because God will converse with you through them and will use you to do His work if you carry them well. If for a while, the harder you try, the harder it gets, take heart. So it has been with the best people who ever lived. Well, now in some frustration, Satan moves right to the point. If he cannot tempt physically and cannot tempt spiritually, he'll simply make an outright proposition. From a high mountain where they might overlook all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them, Satan says, "All these things will I give thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me." Satan makes up for lack of subtlety here with the grandeur of his offer. Never mind that these kingdoms are not ultimately his to give. He simply asks of the great Jehovah, God of heaven and earth, "What's your price?" Cheap bread you resist. Tawdry messianic drama you resist. But no man can resist this world's wealth. Name your price. Satan is proceeding under his first article of faithlessness, the unequivocal belief that you can buy anything in this world for money. Jesus will one day rule the world. He will govern every principality and power in it. He will be King of kings and Lord of lords, but not this way. Indeed, to arrive at the point at all, he has to follow a most inconvenient course. Nothing so simple as worshiping Satan, or for that matter, nothing so simple as worshiping God, at least not in the way some of us think worshiping is simple. His arrival at the throne of grace is to lead through travail and sorrow and sacrifice. Some 7 centuries earlier, Isaiah had prophesied of him, "He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we hid as it were our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. He was oppressed, and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He is brought as a lamb to the slaughter, and he opened not his mouth.